There's a model for change and a process that you can use to help your organization through this. I learned it while at General Electric, and it's very effective. It's called the Change Acceleration Process, a model for change leadership, or CAP. This model focuses on the employees and engaging them in the change so that you're more likely to have a sustained and long-term impacting change. It's a flexible and non-linear model, meaning that you can do these steps in different order depending on what works for your organization, although you will be moving from a current state through a transition to an improved state in that general order. It uses strategic thinking to influence others. And by strategic thinking, we mean, why are we doing the change in the first place? How will this change enable the organization to better compete, better service customers, better provide value? It facilitates a commitment and actual behavioral changes to ensure that the change is long-lasting, and you do this through team dialogue and input and involvement and action plans that the team actually determines themselves. The change acceleration process includes a toolkit of tools you can use throughout various stages, as well as a process that you can use. And here's the change acceleration process. We'll go through it piece by piece. Note that it starts with the current state, you move through a transition state, and then an improved state until you eventually hit the future state. So it's not something that happens overnight, and it requires constant involvement, monitoring, and upgrading and refining to get to that future state. The first element to think about is leading change. And this is the responsibility of the leadership team, the project leader, and the team themselves. And they have to think through their own personal commitment, the reasons that they see this as important to do, and use that to monitor this and continue to improve their own commitment. The first thing that group has to do is create a shared need. And by a shared need, we mean it's easier to stay in the current state. Why would we all want to move to a future state? How can we share in that, and how can we all commit to making that happen? Then you're going to shape a vision. It's not enough just to say we need to make the change. Now you have to give people a vision of where we're going and how we'll know when we got there. Then you're going to mobilize commitment, likely starting with the people that are your linchpins or most interested in making the change, and then including other people in the organization as needed to drive that change completely. You'll focus on making change last by looking at the behaviors in the organization and finding out why certain individuals or certain parts of the organization are not making the change and addressing those. And then finally, you'll monitor progress by looking at key metrics that indicate whether the change has occurred and how well that change has occurred. Is it providing the value that you thought it would provide? And then finally, you'll need to think throughout about the systems and structure that support the change. These are things like your HR processes, your systems, your training and skills upgrade, your hiring process. How do these things affect the change that you're trying to make, and make sure that they're incentivizing that? Here's an example that we can use to think through the change acceleration process that many organizations are going through right now, and that is the transition to using Microsoft Teams throughout your organization. I know of a company who's acquired several other companies, and they don't all use Teams, but the goal is for them to move towards Teams to accelerate productivity and efficiency and working together. So at the start of this, we have to determine who the leaders are that are critical to making this transition. Let's use as an example one particular company that has been integrated but has not yet transitioned to Teams. For that example, the leader of that company and other key leaders in that organization should be part of leading the change. They'll need to articulate why it's beneficial for the organization to move into Teams and what the future vision will look like. The first thing they'll need to do is create that shared need, and that'll focus on what is the problem with the way we are doing things today. Although not working in Teams was fine before the acquisition, now in order for us to work more cohesively as one team, share files and do it more securely, we need to move in a direction that is more collaborative with the entire organization. The next task is to shape a vision. And here, the leadership team and the project team will need to be able to articulate, as we move towards teams, what will that look like? Will we all be on the same instance with an email with the same extension, using it for recordings, etc.? What does it mean to have transitioned to Microsoft Teams? Then we'll need to mobilize the commitment. And here, you want to find some key linchpins, people who are interested in moving towards Teams, see it as value adding. Maybe they're good with technology already and are quick to make that kind of transition. Let them be at the head of the effort and work with other teams to transition as well. Now, making change last, this is all about ensuring that the use of Microsoft Teams is embedded in everyday work. Are project teams using this to store their files? Are groups meeting through Teams and recording those meetings in Microsoft Teams? Even are you using tools like Planner and other applications within Team, polling, using a tool called Poly? Are they using these applications really to embed the use of it in the organization? And then finally, you want to monitor progress. Who's using the team sites? Who's setting up teams within Microsoft Teams? Are we still using alternative technologies like Zoom or WebEx that we no longer need? And you want to take a track of this so you can see how well have we transitioned from our current state to the future state. And continue to monitor this because it does take time to make this type of change. And then finally, you want to think throughout about systems and structures that would support the move to Microsoft Teams. Do you have a help desk that can help users as they have access issues or logon issues or really just don't even know how to use the tool? Do you have training materials that are available in short 2-minute videos that they can download that are specific to your Microsoft Teams instance? What other types of incentives might you use to benefit the move? For example, project teams that move entirely into Teams and begin using it for their project plans and their meetings and their files. How can we incent those teams to do that? These are things you want to think about as you try to transition the whole organization from the current to the future state. And the more that you've planned for these, the better and faster and more effective that move to Microsoft Teams will be. And you'll have less resistance and more people seeing it as the benefit that it is, rather than making them change for no unnecessary reason. So think through these ahead of time in your project and try to come up with some examples of how this might apply as well.